A lot of times when we do photo shoots, I see people holding a reflector. So they have the sun comes this way. They put the reflector this way, and I see the blast of light hitting the person's face. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that you have to have a reference point when you use a reflector. A reference point means what is the light around you look like, and can you match it with a reflector? Not, I have a reflector and I just bought it, I want to blast the poor person with it because I paid full price. You know what I mean? So I want to use the entire reflectors are not like other purchases you make. You buy it to only use 10% of it. That's kind of like most of our gear. You buy it for only, anyway. So let me explain. If you look at the photo on the left, you notice that the skin is well lit. She looks fine. But one thing that you notice also is that her eyes have a little bit of a raccoon eye socket darkness situation. This is where laziness really comes in. Most photographers you're either in a hurry and you have to move on, or you just decide not to take the extra step to fix that. Part of the reason is if it's cloudy, like you're shooting in Seattle or something, the reflector is not going to reflect anything. It's just going to reflect how depressing the sky looks all the time. You see what I'm saying? Joke, in Seattle. If you have sun, like if you live in Arizona, it just reflects too much light, and there's no reference point. If you use a video light outside, you may not have enough power to really bring out the eyes. I think the only solution is either you use a strobe, a flash, or the easiest one to solve this is to do a reflector. If you do the reflector, you have to only use literally 10% of it. It's like the edge of the reflector will give you enough light to keep the reference even. The reference, again, is the lighting levels in the surrounding area that's within your frame and how much light you're throwing into your subject. So if you have a lot of light in the surrounding area, then you can throw more light into your subject because the reference point is higher. If the reference point is lower, like it's kind of moody, you gotta keep it moody on the reflector. Does that make sense? You wanna keep it relaxed. So, the photo on the left is the original photo taken, and the photo on the right is me trying to Photoshop it out. Me trying to make the eyes brighter in Photoshop. So I went with the lasso tool, I highlighted the eyes, and I brought them up, okay? And it looks like that. Would you say, in your honest opinion, the photo on the right is absolutely fantastic? I mean, would you say it's horrible? Probably not horrible, but this is what this class is about. It's about taking the extra step. It's about the extra effort to make it good. I'm gonna show you some reflector usage, and I wanna talk to you about what is the limit that your eye can handle before it starts to squint, which is actually ISO 100 at 5.6, shutter speed 500. That is the limit of your eye. If the light is any higher than that, you're gonna be like, it's gonna be really squinty. None of these lights were using strobes. None of these photos were using anything crazy. It was just me, a reflector, and the person, and that's it. And this is the quality of light we're getting on the two, the difference between the two. The one on the right, you notice something really interesting. Her eyes are lit, but her eye sockets are not overly brightened. That is the key. It is a 10% use of the reflector. So, and then I'm also going to show you some technique I use with this in order to accomplish that. This is a very high-tech piece of equipment. It's called a piece of white fabric. You go get yourselves one of these, and you put that on the reflector, and that reduces the eye socket over brightness, but it still brightens the eyes just enough, because the eyeball is much more reflective than the skin. So all you need is something a little bit brighter, and it will brighten the eyeball without going crazy on the eyes. Okay? And I'll explain that in a second. Here we go. That's me using that little white socket, little white blanket thing on the reflector. I'll explain that. It requires using, if you have some of these little clips, I just get 4 of these, and I just clip the white sheet on it, and I just use a little angle of it. When you put the white sheet on the reflector, it makes the light beautiful. Now, people on the internet are probably saying, Roberto, why don't you just use the white side of the reflector? Duh, right? Oh my God, I never thought about that. It's like, why did I not think about the white side of the reflector? The reflectors, when they're made, the white side is actually has a sheen to it. That's it. That kills the point of what I'm trying to make. That sheen gives it too much power. So I try to keep it. A fabric takes that away. That's the only difference. If they make a reflector that doesn't have that sheen, I would use that. But in the meantime, that's the way it is. I just came up with a business idea. Just kidding. Okay, another one. The limit of somebody's eyes is 5.6, ISO 100, shutter speed 500. If you put someone in light at this point, there is one technique. The light's going to look gorgeous, but you have about a quarter of a second before the people's eyes start to strain. That doesn't mean you don't take the picture. That just means you're aware of it. If your light meter says ISO 100, shutter speed f5.6, aperture f5.6, shutter speed 500, if you have a light meter, most people don't these days, but if you do, you know that you have about half a second before the eyes are going to have a hard time. However, you also know that the light is going to be crazy good, a little bit too good almost, okay? So that is the difference between direct reflection and diffuse reflection. If you have strong light and you put a reflector on the person's face to give it even more light, and that reflection that you put on her face measures higher than what I just said, it's going to be overpowering for her. Why do I mention this? Because I see this all the time. I see people at the beach going, BAM! And I just see the poor bride going, BAM! Like, whoever they're shooting, if you're shooting family pictures, I see a crazy overuse of reflector. If you're shooting children or high school seniors, I just see the reflector being used crazy ways. Creative Life reaches people around the world. This is a good place to say it's a 10% use of your reflector. I know the difference between direct reflection, when the sun hits the reflector and then you bounce it directly, and a diffuse reflection, when the sun hits the reflector, hits the sheet first, diffuses it, absorbs some of the light, and then bounces back softer, cleaner light. Okay? Let's see here. Let me show. I'll put this in a second. This is what your poor subjects look to. It looks like this for them. How would you like to look at that for more than 2 seconds? If you have to do it, close your subject's eyes, get ready to shoot, tell them where to look before they open up their eyes, then tell them to open up their eyes. Okay? So remember, close their eyes, then say, when you open your eyes, look at my shoulder. Okay? My shoulder's right here, remember that. Then they open up their eyes, you take a picture as soon as they open their eyes, and you can take advantage of the light without straining their eyes. This is direct reflection, when the sun hits the reflector directly. This is what your subjects look like under direct reflection. Okay? You see how the light is almost too strong? It's a little bit tomato-ish. Okay? Look at this. Overuse of reflector past the eye limit. You know, I know that in 2015, nobody has a light meter. But I got to say, if you want to learn lighting, you should probably go get a light meter, at least like a cheap one. And remember what I said. I don't use a light meter when I'm shooting. I mean, I do to check this. I use a light meter to train myself on how to read light. I think light meters are one of those discussions where if you're like the techie type, you're like, if you don't have a light meter, you're a disaster. You get out of my face, right? And if you're like the, oh, I just love photography, I want to get into it, you don't even know what a light meter is. I recommend, if you're going to get into the photography world, you should just get a light meter. Like get a cheap one or something. I don't care, but get one. If you do, you're going to be a lot more conscious of the light. When I point my camera at a subject like this, and my settings say ISO 100, shutter speed 500, aperture f5.6, I know I'm not going to be able to shoot it. It's too much. And if my settings say f8, it's going to look like this. That's f8. Now, why do I say these numbers? To confuse people? No. if in your brain you start to associate numbers with looks, you're going to be faster, you're going to be a faster photographer. So for example, if you point your camera at someone and the camera says ISO 100, shutter speed f8, aperture f8, shutter speed 500, your brain should automatically have a reference point. Like, that is too strong. That is too much light. Okay? And you get this. Does that look pleasing to the eye to you guys? No way. This is the limit. ISO 100, shutter speed 1/250th of a second, aperture f4. That's the limit that the eye can stay open without any struggle. And it gives you the maximum amount of light. So if you shoot, yes, Nikki, you have a question.
I just have a question about the aperture. So aren't you letting more light in? I mean, well, I know you're letting more light in the smaller the number is, so 2.8. So why is it stronger at f11?
That's why I love these questions. This is very important that you just said that. I'm not talking about the camera settings. I'm talking about the measurement of light. So if you put the incident light meter next to the person's chin, if it reads f8, you're killing them. Your camera can adjust for that, but the amount of light hitting her face is what I'm talking about. So that's not something that's why the light meter helps. Because if you put a light meter under a person's chin under that light, you say, okay, that's crazy. Like, it's too much light. But yeah, if you were to shoot this with your camera, you would probably go to like some other to kill the light. You would be like at f16 or something like that. Yeah. I'm talking about, that's a good point. Talking about the incident light, like the light that's hitting your subject, not the reflected light, like the incident light. Okay? This is what I do many times. It looks really ghetto, but it's fine. It works totally well. So what happens is you open up your sheet, you wrap it around, and you're done. You just do this. Okay? If you look at the cameras and stuff, it just looks a lot cleaner. If you need someone to hold it, get these clips and just clip it open. And maybe don't do this in front of like a high-end client. It looks a little weird. But, you know, it's the way it goes. Anyway, you get the point. You do it this way, and you get diffuse reflection. Diffuse reflection is a big difference between direct reflection. This allows you to use the entire reflector instead of just 10% of the direct one. Cool? Does that help? It's just a white sheet, okay? Okay. Any questions on that direct versus diffuse reflection and proper use of reflectors and eye limit? Is there any questions on there? Or are we good? Good. Yes, Ken.
I did have some questions from the internet. Maybe we can just take a couple really quickly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this was from Sunrise. So why are the reflectors so big if only 10% is needed? Okay.
Well, you're usually shooting 3/4 body, so you want to have the size of the reflector. The reflector is still pointed at the body, but the main light, the part that's actually hitting the reflector directly, is pointed towards their face. So that's probably why you would do that. I recommend 42-inch reflectors, 52-inch reflectors. Those are pretty good ones. So that's why.
Cool. So that kind of, Roberto, answers a little bit. Is it more effective to use the corner of a big reflector or use a mini reflector? Does it depend on the subject?
Okay, good one, yeah. I have about maybe 8 reflector sizes when I come, and I have a bag with all the reflectors in it. I even have ones that are just about 5 inches or 12 inches or small ones. If I'm shooting a portrait of the girl's face and her face is, or a model or whatever, and she looks good, but her eyes just need a little pop, I don't want to add more light into her entire body. So I just bring like the little 5-inch little disc like this, and I just give it a little pop of light. Now, believe it or not, this works really well. If you need a little pop of light on a small reflector, put put the reflector here, put the video light this way, and that gives you the pop of light that you needed. So if you don't have enough light coming from the sun or whatever, just go like this. Remember, light is light. The light coming from the sun is the same as the light coming from the ice lights or from any light source that you choose, okay? Actually, what I just said right now is really important. I don't know if you can see what I'm saying there. A little pop of light on the ice, you put a small reflector. If you don't have enough light to bounce, use a light like this and make the light, okay?